Today we begin a worship series exploring nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication, NVC shorthand, is a way of talking that helps people share their feelings and needs honestly while listening to others with understanding. If both parties are able to do that, then everyone can connect and work together peacefully. Nonviolent communication, NVC, is a theory created by Marshall Rosenberg. He wrote the book about it in 1999, and in the decades since, it has become a global movement. Countless teachers of NVC relate it to the ideas of NVC to all sorts of realms, NVC and parenting, or education, or business, or relationships, prison reform, many, many more. In this series, we'll look at NVC through the lens of Christianity, relating it to biblical texts along the way. Over the next 6 weeks, we'll explore different conversations in the Bible and consider how they measure up with NVC. First, though, let's start with the basic ideas of nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of NVC, used the term violent communication to describe ways of speaking and listening that block connection, that contribute to hurt, conflict, or disconnection. And he didn't just mean physical violence, but any form of communication that even subtly denies the humanity of ourselves or of others. There's a connection between speech and violence. So here are some examples of what Rosenberg considered to be violent communication. They're also noted in your bulletin under the sermon. First, moralistic judgments. Labeling people as good or bad instead of noticing their needs.
You're a terrible person if you don't recycle.
Okay. Comparison. Measuring people against each other in ways that diminish worth.
Why can't you be as productive working from home as your coworkers?
Blame and criticism. Assigning fault rather than expressing feelings and needs.
We're in this mess because you didn't plan ahead.
Demands. Expecting obedience without choice, often backed with a threat of punishment or a promise of reward.
You must respond to this text immediately, or I'll assume you just don't care.
Denial of responsibility, language that avoids ownership of one's choice.
I had no choice but to respond with that angry email.
Should thinking, framing life in terms of rigid rules or obligations rather than free, need-based choice.
I should always be available online, even when I'm exhausted.
Thank you, Josh. Well done. For Rosenberg, all of these ways of speaking are violent because they can provoke defensiveness or shame or guilt or fear, rather than fostering mutual understanding and compassion. And by the way, the conversations we have with ourselves can be violent. How do you talk to yourself? Does anybody else compare themselves to others or deny responsibility at times? Maybe blame ourselves excessively? I guess maybe it's just me. Nonviolent communication is about two basic things: how we share what's going on for us and how we listen to others. Instead of using hurtful or judging words, it helps us speak and listen in ways that are more likely to bring understanding and connection. Rosenberg offers 4 simple steps. I'll run through them quickly. They are also in your bulletin. I'll run through them quickly and then I'll explain them a little bit more. Number 1, observation. Say what you notice without adding blame or judgment. Number 2, feelings. Know how you feel. 3, needs. Understand what important need is behind that feeling. And requests. Ask clearly for what might help meet your need. Number one, observation without evaluation is harder than you might think. Our brains are wired to instantly judge and interpret experiences, often mixing what we see with the meaning that we attach to it. Number two, it's hard to know our own feelings because we're often taught to hide our feelings or to dismiss them or explain them away instead of paying attention to what's really happening inside of us. Number three involves connecting our feelings with our needs that lie underneath. It's hard to identify our own needs sometimes because many of us grow up focusing on meeting others' expectations or following rules. So we lose practice in noticing and naming what truly matters to us. And this is especially true for women who often are socialized that our role is to meet other people's needs. Having our own needs, well, that's selfish. And number four involves making requests, how to ask clearly for what might meet our need. And it's an art. Vague requests are often not helpful, and they leave both parties feeling frustrated or confused. I just need support right now. Well, what does support look like for you in that moment? And how would the other person know? Do you know what support you're looking for, and can you articulate it? Let's take a look at a biblical conversation and see how it measures up to these NVC guidelines. The text is in your bulletin, Luke 10, beginning in verse 38.
As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me."
Martha, Martha.
There's more.
There's more.
I didn't flip it around, it's my bad.
But wait, there's more.
Just in case, flip it around, y'all. "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her."
So NVC step number one. In this story, where do you see observation, with or without evaluation? I'll give you a moment, look at the text, and consider that question. Where in this story do you see one of the characters make an observation? Well, for me, the first one that pops up is spoken by Martha. She says to Jesus, "Don't you care? My sister has left me to do all the work by myself." And although my heart sympathizes with Martha, her observation contains judgment. She's observed something in Jesus' behavior, and she's placed the judgment that he doesn't care, that she's not important to him. Don't you care? And that may or may not be true, but the point is that she's not likely to receive from Jesus what she wants because of the way she's chosen to express herself. Now, there are more observations we can draw from this story, but we don't have all day, people. I'm just going to name that one. Next, what is Martha feeling? We can't know for sure. And to be clear, I don't consider the Gospels to be transcribed factual conversations. But as Luke tells the story, what do we guess that Martha might be feeling? Yeah. Interesting. Maybe she's frustrated. Maybe she's irritated or disappointed. Frustrated because there's too much work to do. Irritated because that too much work is disproportionately falling to her. Mary's not pulling her load, and Martha is pissed off about it. And perhaps she's disappointed because she thinks that Jesus should stand up for her. Those are her feelings, we'll assume. Now, in NVC, the next step is to identify the needs. Our feelings spring from our needs, and whether or not our needs are met or unmet in that situation. So when our needs are satisfied, we feel emotions like happiness and contentment and wonder, maybe gratitude. But when our needs are not met, we have different feelings. Emotions that are likely more difficult to bear, might be difficult to process. What are Martha's needs connected to her assumed feelings of frustration, irritation, and disappointment? Well, let's take a stab at it. Among universal human needs is the need for cooperation, the need to be seen, the need to be appreciated. Now, for Rosenberg, these are needs that all humans share. And when needs are not satisfied, when our needs are not met, then any human is going to have feelings about that. And sometimes the expression, excuse me, of those feelings will be violent. When our needs are not met, we might blame or criticize or compare or make demands. But if we're able to know ourselves and our feelings, if we're able to identify without judging ourselves what our need is that is not met, then we have a nonviolent option available to us. We can make a request. It's not a demand, but a thoughtful request for the other person to consider. So here's what it might have looked like for Martha to use in VC. What if Martha made a request? What might it be? Well, she might say something like this: Jesus, when I see all of the preparations still needing to be done, while Mary is sitting with you, I feel overwhelmed and I feel alone. I really need cooperation and some acknowledgement of how much work there is. Would you be willing to help me think of a way that the work can get done so I don't feel so burdened? Now, this version follows the 4 steps. Observation: when I see the preparation still needing to be done while Mary is sitting with you. Feeling: I feel overwhelmed and alone. Need: I really need cooperation and some acknowledgement. And request: would you be willing to help me think of a way? As we become skilled at nonviolent communication, the possible responses are countless. Now we're going to hear 3 more responses that Martha might use. And as they are read, follow the 4 steps that are outlined in NVC. May our panel of Marthas stand.
Jesus, when I notice myself working in the kitchen while Mary is listening to you, I feel discouraged. I really need to feel supported and appreciated for the work of hospitality. Would you be willing to tell me if there's value in what I'm doing?
Jesus, when Mary is able to sit with you a while I handle the meal alone, I feel frustrated. I need a sense of fairness and shared responsibility. Would you be open to asking Mary to join me in the work for a while?
Jesus, when I see you speaking with Mary while I'm busy preparing, I feel invisible and sad. I need to feel included and connected, not just useful for the chores. Would you be willing to spend a few moments with me in the kitchen so I can share in your presence too?
Well done. Thank you, Marthas. Now, let me add that it is absolutely necessary for these responses to be offered without judgment or criticism. I mean, words matter, but so does tone of voice and body language. You know, if the other person hears criticism, then they will respond with defensiveness. You know, when Mary is sitting with you while I handle the meal, sounds different than I see Mary, she's sitting there, and I'm here in the kitchen preparing the meal. I mean, those two comments, while identical in wording, mostly identical, will probably get very different responses. If Martha had practiced nonviolent communication that day, the story might have turned out differently, might have read differently in the gospel. She might have felt heard and understood and supported. And Jesus might have found another way to affirm her gifts without diminishing Martha by comparing her to Mary. Oh, Martha, you should be like Mary. The good news is that we don't have to rewrite the Bible. We get to write our own stories with the words that we choose today. Every time we pause to notice without judging, every time we recognize and name our true feelings, every time we honor our own needs and are able to make a clear, respectful request, then we create the possibility of deeper connection. Deeper connection within ourselves, with one another, even with God. Our world is full of noise and blame and demands. Nonviolent communication offers us a practice of love. It's just one small way of living into love, of loving ourselves, of loving others. So in the coming weeks, we'll look deeper into the concepts of NVC and how they might inform us. And if you are an eager student who wants a bit of homework, some of you are like that, you might look back on the scripture today and consider what Jesus' experience might have been in the conversation with Mary. What are his feelings and needs? If he made a request, what might it be? Whether you do the homework or not, my hope is that we go from here this week paying attention to the words we speak to others and to ourselves. Let's practice listening with compassion and speaking with honesty. In this way, our conversations just might become channels of peace and connection. Amen.